What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. Got a jam-packed episode for you guys today as we got news all around the league in the NBA and across college basketball. We're going to continue with the college basketball season previews. We'll be going over the Big East, the Pac-12, and the SEC. Heading into this season, even though the season did tip off the rest of this past week, we're going to be going over those conferences and the preseason outlook for each team. We'll be taking a look at the top college games of the week as we enter week 2 of the NBA, of the college basketball season, and then once again we'll be going over the power rankings across the NBA. So hope everyone's doing well. We had the first week of the NCAA season tip off this past week. It was a good slate of games, a couple of upsets, a couple of interesting games that we'll definitely go over in a few. Not too many ranked matchups, but we do not get very many of those at the beginning of the season, as we've grown accustomed to. But first things first, we'll jump into some news across the leagues before we get into the heat of the episode. So first off, Kelly Oubre. There's news that broke out this week. Kelly Oubre will be out indefinitely after getting hit by a car. That news broke Saturday night. Kind of crazy news that was very unexpected. There's the injuries do not seem very good. So Oubre is going to miss significant time with broken ribs and multiple face injuries. So apparently he was crossing the street, got struck by a car in the upper chest area, was rushed to the hospital. The news broke last night, and it was also in the Philadelphia area. So raises some concerns and some interesting questions about, what exactly was going on. We don't have any details. When he was in the hospital in stable condition, that's kind of when the news broke yesterday. So there's very little in-depth information that we know besides the fact that he just has broken ribs and multiple other injuries. And Oubre has been a huge part of the 76ers' great start to the season. The Sixers are off to a 7-2 start. He was a late free agent signing for the Sixers. He stayed on the market all summer long. He ended up signing a 1-year deal with the 76ers and played in all 8 games to start the season and started 5 of those games, and was averaging 16.3 points and 5.1 rebounds through the first 8 games. So he's going to be out for a long time now. It's unclear exactly how long it's going to be. Will it be, a month, or will it be multiple months? It seems like it'll be probably multiple months. Rib injuries are always tricky to predict and difficult to assess, especially early on. So it's going to make things very interesting in the Sixers locker room, who's going to step up and get some more minutes. I mean, obviously the James Harden trade just went down. They acquired a few interesting forwards in that trade: Robert Covington and Marcus Morris and Nicholas Batum. So one of those 3 guys is probably going to slot in, get a lot more minutes for the Sixers, and probably have to take over Oubre's role. Marcus Morris and Robert Covington have not been playing much since the trade went down, so they're still trying to kind of find their role on the team. Batum's played a little bit off the bench, but all of their roles are going to be exceeded for sure. So Kelly Oubre will be out indefinitely, and not a good situation at all for the Philadelphia 76ers. So jumping back into things, in last week's episode, we went over the college basketball season preview, and we went over the top 3. We went over 3 conferences: the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12. So we got 3 more to jump into this week, and we'll be jumping into the Big East first off. So the Big East, obviously, had a lot of big turnovers over the past offseason. Rick Pitino taking over St. John's, UConn being the reigning national champions in the NCAA after last season. And there's a bunch of teams. The Big East is arguably the second or third best conference in college basketball now heading into the season. And they by far showed last year with how dominant their teams have been. They've got 4 teams in the preseason top 25, but the preseason all Big East first team: Trey Alexander and Ryan Kalkbrenner, both on the first team from Creighton. Alexander's one of the best returning upperclassmen in the Big East this year. Ryan Cockbrenner, the same thing as a center. Bryce Hopkins, also from Providence, the transfer from Kentucky, who played for Providence last year and had a huge role on their on a very solid Providence team last season. Joel Soriano, who is already off to a hot start in the one game that St. John's has played so far this season, and then Justin Moore from Villanova. Those are the preseason All Big East first team members. Then the second team, Donovan Clingan from UConn. So Clingan, 7'4" freshman last year, who didn't get a ton of playing time, was the backup big man for them. But with Adama Sanogo now in the NBA and UConn heading into a different into kind of a different role, Klingen's going to get a much bigger role throughout UConn season. So he's a preseason All Big East second teamer. Baylor Shireman, also from Creighton. So 3 Creighton Blue Jays are in the All Big East teams. Baylor Shireman's a grad senior, transfer from North Dakota State last year. Had a great season for them and decided to play his 5th year and not go into the NBA last season. Oso Ighodaro from Marquette, as well as Cam Jones from Marquette. Marquette's two of Marquette's best players are also on the second team. And then Eric Dixon, the big man from Villanova, also on the second team. The preseason player of the year is last year's Big East player of the year, Tyler Kolek, point guard from Marquette. He's returning this year. He was the Big East player of the year last year. He is now heading into this season, Big East preseason player of the year. And Big East freshman of the year is Stephon Castle, who's a guard from UConn. So those are the all Big East preseason teams. And as far as the rankings go, there's very interesting list. It's a very interesting list with the amount of teams that are in the top 25. So the Big East has 3 teams that are in the top 10 in the preseason top 25, and the first one being number 5 Marquette. So Marquette comes in the preseason top 25 at number 5. They're number 11 in the Ken Palm rankings. Shaka Smart's entering his 3rd year at the helm at Marquette. He basically turned the program around last year and had a tremendous season. They have a bunch of returning guys, including Tyler Kolek, who was the Big East player of the year last season, averaging 12.9 points and 7.5 assists. He's a senior now this year. Cam Jones averaged 15 points and 3.6 rebounds last season. He returns Osa Ighodaro, who averaged 11.4 points, 5.9 rebounds. Stevie Mitchell and David Joplin, who also were big role players last year for Marquette. So Marquette, basically, they were a dominant team last year. They finished the top 10 in the AP poll. They're bringing everybody back practically this season. So they're ranked preseason at number 5, 11 on the Ken Palm rankings. At number 2 in the Big East, we have the number 8 ranked Creighton Blue Jays. So as we were just saying before, Creighton has a bunch of guys in the Big East preseason first and second teams. They're ranked number 8 in the country in the preseason, number 12 in Ken Palm rankings. Greg McDermott, obviously still their head coach, 14th season as head coach of Creighton. They made it to the furthest that they ever did in Greg McDermott's era in Creighton. Last year, they made it all the way to the Elite 8. That's the furthest that they've ever made it. So, and they're bringing back a lot of guys from last season. They're not bringing everybody back. They lost Arthur Kaluma to Kansas State, and a couple of guys going to the NBA, including Ryan Nemhard. But they're bringing back Trey Alexander, who was a big player for them, going to be taking over at point guard now. Averaged 13.6 points and 4.2 rebounds. Ryan Cockbrenner, who's their big senior, averaged 15.9 points, 6.1 rebounds. And Baylor Shireman, who was their big transfer last year, averaged 12.8 points and 8.3 rebounds. He's going to be a grad senior, and he's coming back. And then one of the best transfers in the nation, too, coming in is point guard Stephen Ashworth, who is a senior from Utah State, averaged 16.2 points and 4.5 assists for Utah State last season. He's also coming in. So Ashworth and Alexander is going to be the backcourt this season for Creighton. They got Cockbrenner and Shireman in the front court. So they've got a very good team again. They got a couple of freshmen coming in, no real big time freshmen, but a few interesting guys. Then number 3 in the Big East preseason rankings, we have the number 6 ranked UConn Huskies. So obviously UConn won the national championship last year, and They ended up losing a lot of guys though, and that if they ended up bringing a lot of those guys back, they'd probably be the preseason #1 team in the country. But they're number 6, they're number 4 in the Ken Palm rankings. So Ken Palm's got them a lot higher than the AP poll does. But Dan Hurley, entering the 6th year of his UConn tenure, obviously won the national championship last year. They're losing a few guys: Adamas Sanogo, who's headed to the NBA, Andre Jackson, who's on the Milwaukee Bucks, Jordan Hawkins, who's on the New Orleans Pelicans. So those were 3 of their best players last season. Lost all of those guys to the NBA, but they're bringing back Donovan Clingan, who we talked about, who was a big freshman last year, backup big man, averaged 6.9 points, 5.6 rebounds. They're going to definitely ask for a lot from him this year. Then Alex Karaban too. So Alex Karaban was a freshman last year and kind of broke out. Wasn't a huge nationally ranked freshman, but broke out and had a great season last year as somewhat of a role player for UConn. Averaged 9.3 points and 4.5 rebounds. And Hassan Diarra as well, who was a backup big man, and Tristan Newton as well, who was another forward who started for UConn last year, who's also coming back this season. He averaged 10.1 points and 4.7 assists. So he'll probably be in the backcourt. Alex Karaban may join him in the backcourt. But they also, really the reason why they're ranked so high in the AP poll, even after losing arguably their 3 best players from last year, is the amount of freshmen they brought in. So they brought in a transfer, Cam Spencer, who's a grad senior from Rutgers, averaged 13 points and 4 rebounds last season. But they have Stephon Castle, who's the number 12 ranked freshman in the nation, point guard, a potential first-round pick in this upcoming NBA draft. They also have 3 other top 100 freshmen: Solomon Ball, who is ranked 33rd, Jaden Ross 84th, and Jalen Stewart, who's ranked 95th. Those guys are more developmental guys who they'll probably keep for a few years and will be bigger pieces down the road. But Stephon Castle, Big East, the preseason Big East freshman of the year, potential first-round pick. He's going to slot in as their starting point guard. And that's one big reason why UConn's ranked so high in the preseason. Then at number 4 in the Big East rankings, we got Villanova, who's number 22 in the nation, 23rd in the Ken Palm rankings. This is the second year of the Kyle Neptune era. The main reason why Villanova is ranked so high, they had a tough year the last couple of years with Jay Wright signed to retire, but they're bringing back Justin Moore, who was their best player last year, and Eric Dixon. Dixon averaged 15.4 points, 6.6 rebounds. Moore averaged 13.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, all seniors. But the amount of transfers that they have coming in, they have 4 big-time transfers all coming in, 4 of the most highly sought-after transfers on the market this past offseason. Tyler Burden being the key piece. He's a grad senior from Richmond. He's been one of the best mid-major players in the country over the past several years. He's playing his 5th year of eligibility for Villanova, averaged 19 points, 7.4 rebounds for Richmond last year. Lance Ware, another one who's a senior transfer over from Kentucky, barely played last year, only averaged 2 points, 2 rebounds. Hakeem Hart, who was another highly sought-after transfer. He's a senior who's coming over from Maryland, averaged 11.4 points and 4.1 rebounds. And then TJ Bamba, who was another highly sought-after transfer. He's also a senior from Washington State, averaged 15.8 points and 3.7 rebounds. So bringing in those 4 transfers, immediate huge impacts. And the tough thing, though, is Villanova is all of their stars are seniors this year. So they're going to be losing all these guys. They're going to be losing all 4 of their transfers and Justin Moore and Eric Dixon after this season. So this is their one chance at making a deep run at it. They're ranked 22nd in the nation in the preseason. And then number 5, we have St. John's. So St. John's obviously was one of the talks of the offseason in college basketball. Rick Pitino took over, longtime head coach in the NCAA and in the NBA ranks. Kind of left Louisville after winning a national championship on some interesting terms with a few scandals going on. He went to go coach in Greece and coached at Iona over the past couple of years. He's taken over St. John's, which to some is basically his last run in big time basketball, basically. St. John's is unranked heading into the season, but they're ranked 60th in the Ken Palm rankings. They're one guy that they're returning after losing. Obviously, whenever a team has a head coaching switch, they usually end up losing a lot of guys who were playing for the team for the head coach who recruited them. So as Mike Anderson left after last year, they lost most of their guys, but they're bringing back their star player from last year, Joel Soriano, who averaged 15.2 points and 11.9 rebounds. And they've also got several big-time transfers that are coming in. Naheem Aline, who's a grad senior from UConn, who was on the national championship team last year, averaged 5.2 points, 1.2 rebounds. Chris Ledlum, who's a senior from Harvard, who averaged 19 points and 9 rebounds last season. Jordan Dingle, who's a grad senior from Penn, another Ivy League guy who led the Ivy League in scoring last season with 23.4 points a game. Sean Conway, who's a grad senior as well, is coming over. And then Danis Jenkins, who's a senior from Iona, who's one of Iona's best players under Rick Pitino last season. He averaged 15.6 points and 4.9 assists. And then they have one top 100 freshman coming in, Simeon Welcher, who was ranked number 90 in the top 100 in the ESPN top 100. So it's going to be an interesting year for St. John's. They have a lot of notable transfers, so it's very difficult to predict the preseason of how they're going to do. A lot of people think that these transfers are big time. They're bringing two of the best Ivy League players in the country last season, Chris Ledlum from Harvard and Jordan Dingle from Penn. And a lot of people think that those are going to be immediate impacts. Sean Conway is a good local guy they're bringing in. Then Danis Jenkins, who was one of Rick Pitino's favorite players at Iona, he brought over to St. John. So I think that they're going to be able to, help the team into the right direction. Then number 6, you got Xavier, who is ranked 34th in the Ken Palm rankings. Sean Miller's entering the second year of his tenure there at Xavier. Zach Fremantle, who averaged 15 points, 8 rebounds last season, returns, as well as Jerome Hunter, who averaged 7 points and 4 rebounds. They're also bringing in a few transfers. Davian McKnight, who's a senior from Western Kentucky, averaged 16.5 points and 5 rebounds. Quincy Oliveri, who is a transfer from Rice, and Abu Usman, who's a transfer from North Texas. All three of them coming in for Xavier. So that's why they're ranked so high. They had a tough year last year. Was not very dominant. They got 2 top 100 freshmen coming in, Trey Green, number 59, Dalen Swan at number 96. So they've got some interesting stuff going on, Xavier. They're not one of the highly sought-after teams in the league. Sean Miller is still kind of building up that program since taking it over. He kind of took it over in shambles. Xavier was dominant a few years ago, but has had a tough time recruiting and bringing some guys back. But he's starting to build up the program a little bit, and they should be pretty decently competitive. I mean, Ken Palm's got them ranked at 34 in the preseason rankings. They're obviously not in the top 25 in the AP poll. And then rounding out the Big East at number 7, you got Providence. This is the first year of the Kim English era. Obviously, Ed Cooley left to go to Georgetown, and Georgetown is ranked at number 8 in the preseason ranking. Seton Hall ranked at number 9, Butler at 10, and DePaul at number 11. And then jumping over from the Big East, we got the Pac-12. The Pac-12, this could be, as we talked about all summer, this could be the final year of the Pac-12. There are only 2 teams that are still slated to be in the Pac-12 next season. Every other team has jumped ship to either the Big 12 or the Big 10 or any of the top conferences, ACC as well. Everybody is basically abandoning the Pac-12, but this might be the final run for the long time conference. The preseason all Pac-12 first team is a stacked one. They've got about 9 guys, I think, on their first team, which is interesting. Umar Ballo from Arizona, Adam Bona from UCLA, Keon Brooks from Washington, Brandon Carlson from Utah, Isaiah Collier from USC, Boogie Ellis also from USC, and Folly Dante from Oregon, Tristan Da Silva from Colorado, Spencer Jones from Stanford, and KJ Simpson from Colorado. And the second team is Caleb Love from Arizona, Colin Boswell from Arizona, Kobe Johnson from USC, and Fardaz Amik from Cal, and Jordan Pope from Oregon State is the preseason all Pac-12 teams. And as you heard a lot in those teams, there's a lot of Arizona players. And at number 1 in the preseason rankings for the Pac-12 is the Arizona Wildcats. They're ranked 12th in the nation in the preseason. They're ranked 6th in the Ken Palm rankings as well. Tommy Lloyd now in his 3rd year since taking over at Arizona. They're bringing back a couple of interesting players. Umar Ballo, who was an all Pac-12 team member for the preseason. He's a senior, averaged 14 points and 9 rebounds last season. Pell Larson, who averaged 9.9 points and 4.3 rebounds, also returning. And then they're bringing in a few transfers. They've got 3 big-time transfers, arguably the second best transfer on the market this offseason, Caleb Love, who's a senior from North Carolina. He's coming over to play for Arizona in his final year of eligibility. Averaged 16.7 points and 3.7 rebounds last season for UNC. Keyshawn Johnson, who was part of the San Diego State team that made the run all the way to the national championship. He's a grad senior. He'll be playing at Arizona this year. And then Jaden Bradley from Alabama transfer, averaged 6.4 points and 2.6 rebounds. Then at number 2, we got the number 21 ranked USC Trojans. There's only 2 teams in the Pac-12 in the AP Top 25 preseason rankings. That's Arizona and USC. So USC is ranked 21 in the preseason poll, and it's mainly because of a couple of guys. So they're ranked 21 in the AP poll. They're also ranked 21 in Ken Palm's rankings. So Ken Palm agreed with the AP poll for once with these rankings. Andy Enfield is now in his 11th year since taking over at USC. They're bringing back Boogie Ellis, who's one of the favorites to win all Pac-12 Player of the Year this season. Averaged 17.7 points last year. Kobe Johnson also coming back, and Joshua Morgan coming back. They have one interesting freshman, Dennis Rodman Jr. is playing for USC this year. DJ Rodman, he's a grad senior transfer from Washington State. Averaged 9.6 points and 5.8 rebounds last season. So he's coming over to play at USC. But the main reason why USC is in the top 25 is because of their freshmen that they got coming in. The number 1 overall ranked incoming freshman from the ESPN Top 100, Isaiah Collier, is playing for USC. He's a favorite to be the first overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft. And then, of course, Bronny James, who's the number 20 ranked player in the top 100. And Brandon Gardner is ranked at number 85. So it's the freshmen that are really bringing USC together. They also have Boogie Ellis, who is a senior and coming over. So USC should be at the top of the ranks once again. And then at number 3 is UCLA. So UCLA, it just misses the top 25 in the Ken Palm rankings. They're ranked 26th. They didn't make the top 25 in the AP poll. Mainly because they lost a bunch of guys. They lost to top 4 scorers from last season, Jaime Jaquez, Tiger Campbell, Jalen Clark, and Amari Bailey. Mick Cronin, though, is entering his 5th year since taking over at UCLA, coming over from Cincinnati. The one main player that they're returning is Adam Bona, who was a big-time freshman last year, big-time recruit. Didn't get a ton of playing, played up and down, but is one of their key pieces this year. And their biggest transfer, they have one big transfer coming in, Lazar Stefanovic from Utah, who averaged 10 points. But what's keeping UCLA kind of alive is the amount of freshmen that they have coming in. So Burke Bayatunsel, who is a freshman guard. He's from overseas, so isn't in the top 100, but by some is considered the best overseas incoming freshman in the entire nation. Then they also have Sebastian Mack ranked at 67, Devin Williams at 72, and Brandon Williams at 75. So UCLA out of the top 25, but is looking to stay dominant. And then at number 4, we got the Oregon Ducks. So Oregon ranked at number 41 in the Ken Palm rankings. Their one big returning guy is N'Faly Dante, the big man, averaged 13.4 points, 8.4 rebounds last year. He's going to be a senior this year. They got a few interesting transfers coming in. Kario Okendo from Georgia and Jesse Zarzula from Central Michigan, who averaged 16.3 points last season. Both seniors are coming over to play for Oregon. And then they have some top freshmen, though, too. They've got 3 top 40 freshmen coming in, including power forward Kwame Evans, who's ranked 14th in the nation. Small forward Mookie Cook, who's ranked 21st in the nation, and point guard Jackson Shellstat, ranked 36th in the nation. Kwame Evans is a potential first-round pick in this upcoming NBA draft. So he's one of the key guys to look for in Oregon. I don't think Oregon's got that great of a team, and that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the Pac-12 heading into the season. At number 5, you got Colorado, who's ranked 28th in the KenPom rankings. They got Tristan Da Silva, one of the best players in the nation, but that's about it. They got the number 7 ranked freshman too, as well, Cody Williams. So they got 2 guys to watch for. So if you see a Colorado game on at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, maybe take a look just to check those 2 guys out, but that's pretty much it. Then number 6, Arizona State. Number 7 is Utah. At number 8 is Stanford. Number 9 is Washington. Number 10 is Washington State. Number 11 is Cal. And number 12 is Oregon State, who's supposed to be abysmal, ranked 175 in the KenPom rankings. So pretty much in the second half of the entire Division I rankings, Oregon State. So they're not supposed to be any good. And as of right now, Oregon State and Washington State are the only teams left in the Pac-12 after this season. We've gone over that plenty, but the Pac-12 really has 2 competitive teams this year, Arizona and USC, who are both preseason AP top 25 teams. They're going to be really good. They're going to be teams to watch out for this season. They're potential teams to make it deep into the tournament as well. But in my opinion, that's really it. I don't think UCLA is that tough. I don't think Oregon's that tough. And the rest of it, Colorado's got a couple of fun players to watch. They're not going to be a great overall team. And the rest of the conference is just not going to be that good. So overall, this is definitely the weakest of the Power 6 conferences in college basketball. The Pac-12, they've been the weakest over the last several years, and that's partially why they're going to be completely falling apart after this year and probably will cease to exist after the 23-24 season. So that's the Pac-12 rankings. And then to round it out, the last conference that we need to go over, the SEC. So the SEC has a very sneaky conference this year. A lot of people are putting a lot of emphasis on the Big East and the Big 10, the Big 12, but the SEC could very well be the second or third best conference in all of college basketball this season. They've got a lot of dynamic teams. They've become a powerhouse for the last several seasons. The all-SEC first team, Santiago Vescovi from Tennessee, Wade Taylor IV from Texas A&M, Mark Sears from Alabama, Tolu Smith from Mississippi State, and Janai Broome from Auburn. The second team is Justin Edwards from Kentucky, Antonio Reeves from Kentucky, Grant Nelson from Alabama, Trevon Brazili from Arkansas, and Zakai Ziegler from Tennessee. The preseason player of the year is Wade Taylor IV from Texas A&M. The preseason freshman of the year is Justin Edwards from Kentucky, and the preseason defensive player of the year is Zakai Ziegler, point guard from Tennessee. And ranked at number 1 in the preseason rankings for the SEC is number 8 ranked Tennessee. So Tennessee is ranked 8th in the AP top 25. They're ranked 8th in the KenPom rankings as well. Rick Barnes entering his 9th year. They're bringing back a bunch of big-time players that were key parts of their run last season. Josiah Jordan-James, who's a senior, averaged 10 points, 4.7 rebounds last year. Santiago Vescovi, who averaged 12.5 points last season, and Zakai Ziegler, who was Defensive Player of the Year last year in the Pac-12 in the SEC and is preseason Defensive Player of the Year again this year, averaged 10.7 points, 5.4 assists. So that's partly the main reason why they're ranked so high this year. But they also have 2 big-time freshmen, 2 big-time transfers coming in as well. Jordan Gainey, who's a junior coming over from USC Upstate. He averaged 15.2 points last season for them. He's coming over. And then Dalton Knecht, who's already been off to a great start for Tennessee this season. He's a senior from Northern Colorado. He averaged 20.2 points, 7.2 rebounds for Northern Colorado last season. He comes over and is going to be immediately one of their best big men. And then they got 3 big-time freshmen coming in too. Freddie DeLone, who's the 38th ranked, JP Estrella, who's 70th ranked, and Cameron Carr, who's ranked at number 91. And then at number 2 in the SEC preseason rankings, we have Texas A&M. So Texas A&M surprised everybody last year with a bit of a run that they went on. They weren't very dominant, but they were pretty consistently good throughout the entire season, and they're practically bringing everybody back from last year. Buzz Williams is now in his 5th year at Texas A&M. They're ranked 15th in the AP poll in the preseason, 24th in the Ken Palm rankings. They're bringing back the preseason player of the year in the SEC, Wade Taylor IV, who averaged 16.3 points and 3.9 assists, Henry Coleman, who averaged 9 points, 5.7 rebounds, and Julius Marble, who averaged 9 and 4 last year. And a couple of interesting transfers coming in too, Jace Carter from UIC, who averaged 16.6 points a game, and Eli Lawrence from Middle Tennessee State, who averaged 12 and 4 last season. So they got a few good guys coming in. They got a few returning guys as well. So that's part of the reason why Texas A&M is ranked so high. Then number 3, we got Arkansas. Arkansas is ranked 14th in the AP Top 25 in the preseason. They're also ranked 14th in the Ken Palm rankings. So once again, Ken Palm agrees with those rankings. Eric Musselman's now in his 5th year at Arkansas as well. They're bringing back a few interesting guys. They had 3 big-time freshmen last year who all entered the NBA after the season. Anthony Black, Nick Smith, and Jordan Walsh. But they're bringing back Trayvon Brazili, who's a preseason all-SEC player. Devontae Davis, who averaged 10.9 points, 4.4 rebounds, and Mekhi Mitchell, who is also a senior, averaged 7 and 5 last season. And they've got several interesting transfers coming in too. They're leading off with Khalif Battle, who's a grad senior from Temple, averaged 18 points for them. Keon Menfield from Washington, who averaged 10 and 3 for them. Tremont Mark from Houston, who averaged 10.1 points, 4.9 rebounds. Jeremiah Davenport from Cincinnati, and L. Ellis, who was the star player for a terrible Louisville team last year, is also coming over to Arkansas. He's a senior, averaged 17.7 points and 4.4 assists. And they have a couple of big-time freshmen as well. Bay Fall, who is the number 29 ranked freshman, and Layden Blocker, who's the 31st ranked freshman. So that's why Arkansas is ranked so high. Then number 4, we got the number 16th ranked Kentucky Wildcats. They're ranked 16th in the AP Top 25. They're ranked 18th in the Ken Palm rankings. John Calipari obviously still taking over. They lost practically their entire team from last year. That's why they're a little bit lower in the top 25. But the big story is the amount of freshmen that they have coming in. They're bringing back Antonio Reeves, who jumps in to arguably be their leading scorer this year as a senior. They have one big transfer, Trey Mitchell from West Virginia, who decided to jump ship when Bob Huggins decided to leave or got kicked out of West Virginia. He averaged 12 and 6 last year for them. But the big story is the amount of freshmen that they have. Justin Edwards is number 3 ranked freshman in the nation. DJ Wagner, the number 4. Aaron Bradshaw at number 6. Rob Dillingham at number 15. And Reed Shepard, number 23. So they have 5 of the top 25 incoming freshmen. Justin Edwards and DJ Wagner both supposed to be lottery picks this year. Aaron Bradshaw could be a later first-round pick. Rob Dillingham, possibly a later first-round pick. And Reed Shepard could potentially be a first-round pick, but probably more of a guy that stays a couple of years and then enters the NBA draft. But Justin Edwards is the preseason freshman of the year in the SEC. He's the 3rd overall ranked freshman incoming. DJ Wagner obviously is a legend in high school basketball. He's coming over. So they're loaded with freshmen once again. But the question is, will they flop like they've been doing over the last couple of years with not having too many transfers come in and just kind of relying on freshmen? So that'll be interesting to see. And then at number 5 in the SEC preseason rankings, you have number 24, Alabama. So Alabama is ranked 24th in the AP Top 25, but ranked 10th in the Ken Palm rankings. So Ken Palm's very high on them for interesting reasons. Their one big returning player is Mark Sears, who's a senior, 12.5 points, 3.5 rebounds he averaged. And they have 3 big-time transfers coming in, which is kind of keeping them in the top 25. Aaron Estrada, who is a senior coming over from Hofstra. He averaged 20.2 points a game last season. Grant Nelson, who was one of the best mid-major players in the nation last year from North Dakota State, averaged 17.9 points and 9.3 rebounds. He was a potential late first-round pick in the NBA draft last season. He decided to come back and play for Alabama instead. And Latrell Wrightsell Jr., who's a senior from Cal State Fullerton. He averaged 16.3 points, and he's also going to be transferring over. So Alabama bringing in 3 big-time transfers, 3 big-time mid-major players last season to kind of fill in for the guys that they don't have returning to add to Mark Sears. And then the rest of the SEC, the top 5 teams, those are all the top 25 teams. Auburn is ranked at number 6. They're 15 in the Ken Palm rank. So Ken Palm thinks that they're a pretty notable top 25 team, but they're unranked to start the season. Mississippi State is ranked at 27 in the Ken Palm rankings. Florida is ranked at 39. Missouri is ranked at 55. Ole Miss at 82. Vanderbilt at 79. Georgia at 57. LSU at 47. And South Carolina at 66. So those are the rest of the SEC rankings. But once again, the top 5 are the teams to look out for. Tennessee, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Alabama are going to be the real difference makers. I think you can throw Auburn into that mix though too. I actually think Auburn. I don't think that Auburn's really a national title contender. They're more of like probably an 8 or 9 seed and maybe even a 10 seed in the tournament this year. But they could be a tournament team. I think they got a decent squad, and Bruce Pearl's got a pretty decent squad out there for Auburn. So that's the rest of the SEC, and that's the rest of the rankings right there. So that wraps up our college basketball season preview as week 1 wrapped up and the Big East, Pac-12, and SEC we've completely wrapped up for you. So jumping from that, we're going to go over some of the top college games of the week. For this upcoming week in college basketball. First game to watch out for is Monday night at 6:30. We have Michigan at St. John's on FS1. So this is the first game of the Gavitt tip-off games from the Madison Square Garden. It's a home game for St. John's. Michigan's 2-0 to start the season. They beat UNC Asheville and Youngstown State. Olivia Nakoma, who has been their star player, scoring 25-7, 17-10 in the first 2 games. And then St. John's has only played 1 game so far this season. They beat Stony Brook. Joel Soriano, who's going to be the star player, had 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Michigan is not projected to be that great of a team this year. We went over them when we went over the Big Ten. They lost a lot of guys and don't have too many guys returning. So Juwan Howard's team should not be a highly sought-after team in the Big Ten this year. But St. John's has the possibility to be a very good team. And then over from that, another game Monday night, we got Xavier taking on number 3 Purdue Monday night at 8:30 on FS1. So this is also a Gavitt tip-off game. That's kind of just it's a series of games that they're doing all across the country. Kind of notable games just to tip off the season. Xavier's off to a 2-0 start. They beat Robert Morris and Jacksonville. Desmond Cloud had 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 25 points, 3 rebounds to start off the season. And Purdue's also off to a 2-0 start. So they beat Samford and Morehead State. Zach Edey, the reigning player of the year, had 16-11 and 18-8 in those first 2 games. So Xavier taking on Purdue. Battle of 2-0 teams. Obviously, Purdue is supposed to be one of the best teams in the nation this upcoming season, so it'll be interesting to see. And then by far the best game of the week, we got number 2 Duke at number 4 Michigan State, Tuesday at 7 o'clock on ESPN. This game's going to be an all-around classic. It's the State Farm Champions Classic at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois, so it's not really a home game for Michigan State, but Duke is off to a 1-1 start. They beat Dartmouth, but then they lost to Arizona. They had a good game this past week against Arizona. They lost 78-73. Kyle Filipowski had 25 points and 8 rebounds in that game. That game came all the way to the end. Was an overall tremendous game to tip off the season. And Michigan State as well had a very, very good game. They're also 1-1 to start the season, but they lost a heartbreaker to James Madison on opening night. And then they beat Southern Indiana. So they're ranked number 4 heading into the week. But when the new AP rankings come out on Monday, they're going to definitely be a lot lower than 4 after losing a bye game on opening nights to James Madison. But Tyson Walker had 35 points and 14 points in the first 2 games. He had 35 points in their loss to James Madison. And then Tuesday nights, we have number 5 Marquette taking on number 25 Illinois, Tuesday at 8 o'clock on FS1. Marquette's off to a 2-0 start, beating Northern Illinois and Rider. And then Illinois is also off to a 2-0 start, beating Eastern Illinois and Oakland. So this should be a pretty good game. Battle of a Big East team versus a Big Ten team. Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. And then at the exact same time, Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN Plus, we have number 15, Texas A&M at SMU. So SMU unranked, but they're off to a pretty decent start. Texas A&M is 2-0. They beat Texas A&M Commerce and Ohio State to start the season. Wade Taylor, who's the preseason SEC Player of the Year, had 16.6 assists and 21 points, 4 assists in their first 2 games. SMU is also 2-0. They beat Western Illinois and Lamar to start off the season. And then the second best game of the week is going down Tuesday night at 9:30 on ESPN. Number 1 Kansas at number 16 Kentucky. So this is going to be a really good game. Kansas and Kentucky, bitter rivals. The State Farm's Champions Classic from Chicago, Illinois. Another game in that tournament. Kansas is 2-0 to start the season. They beat NC Central and Manhattan. Kentucky is also 2-0. They beat New Mexico State and Texas A&M Commerce. So these are going to be 2 good teams going at it. I'm very excited for this one. Hunter Dickinson taking on Antonio Reeves and all the great freshmen that Kentucky has. So I'm excited to check out this game. And then another ranked game that we have, a battle of 2 former WCC teams, in St. Mary's versus San Diego State. San Diego State now is in the Mountain West, but St. Mary's is ranked 23 in the country. San Diego State is ranked 17. This game is Friday at 9:30 on ESPN Plus. It's the Continental Tire main event at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. St. Mary's is off to a 1-0 start. They beat New Mexico, and they're going to be playing Weber State on Sunday. San Diego State is off to a 1-1 start. They beat Cal State Fullerton and lost to BYU, who is now in the Big Ten. But they have Long Beach State on Tuesday. Jaden Ledee has been their leading scorer. And then the last big game to watch out for this week in college basketball, the reigning national champions, number 6 UConn at Indiana, Sunday at 1 o'clock on ESPN, part of the SOTFA Empire Classic at Madison Square Garden. UConn off to a 2-0 start. Alex Caravan's been off to a great start, 22 points and 15 points in those 2 games. Indiana's off to a 1-0 start, beating Florida Gulf Coast, but they're taking on Army on Sunday and then Wright State on Thursday, so they got 2 more games before this game next Sunday that they'll have to play, so they'll be 3 games deep. They should be 3-0 by then. Should not lose to Army and Wright State. UConn should also be 3-0. And they should be able to beat Mississippi Valley State, so this should be an even better game come Sunday for both of these teams. So those are the top games to watch out for. Once again, early in the season, we got a lot of bye games going on. So really the 2 to watch out for is Duke, Michigan State Tuesday night and Kansas, Kentucky Tuesday night at 9:30. So both on ESPN, back to back at 7 o'clock and then 9:30. So they're both part of the State Farm's Champions Classics in Chicago on Tuesday night. And rounding things off before the end of the episode, we'll be going over the Week 3 power rankings in the NBA. So jumping more into some NBA action instead of college basketball, as we've been doing, we're going to rank the top 5 teams in the NBA over the past after Week 3 of the NBA season has taken place. So at number 5, I got the Indiana Pacers. So the Pacers remain in my top 5. They're 6-3 now. They beat San Antonio, Utah, and Milwaukee this week. Tyrese Halliburton has been off to a great start, averaging 24 points, 12 assists. And Miles Turner is averaging 17.6 points, 8.2 rebounds. They also have 7 guys averaging more than 10-plus points a game in Halliburton, Turner, Mathurin, Buddy Hield, Aaron Nesmith, Jalen Smith, and Bruce Brown. This week, they have a very light schedule as they'll be taking on Philly in Philadelphia Tuesday night, and then they'll be taking on Orlando in Indiana on Sunday. So they're ranked at number 5. They've been playing good brand of basketball. I like what I've seen from them, so they remain there. And then number 4 is the Dallas Mavericks. You know, I haven't been extremely high on the Mavericks to start the season, but they're 7-2 now. I can't look away, and ignore the fact that they're off to a great start. They lost to Toronto this week, but they also beat Orlando and the Clippers, who are both good teams this year. Luka had 44 points and 6 rebounds in the win against the Los Angeles Clippers. Luka is off to a tremendous start, averaging 32.9 points a game, 8.9 rebounds, 8.4 assists. Kyrie Irving's averaging 21.3 points, 6.7 assists. And then Derek Lively, who's been one of the best freshmen, one of the best rookies in the nation in all of the NBA so far this season, averaging 8.6 points, 7.3 rebounds, and a block. And this week they'll be taking on the Pelicans in New Orleans on Tuesday. They'll be at Washington on Wednesday, at Milwaukee on Saturday, and then at home against Sacramento on Sunday. So they have a jam-packed schedule this week with 4 games, 3 of them being on the road. So we'll see how the Mavericks do, but they're ranked at number 4. And then at number 3, I got the Boston Celtics. So the Celtics fall 1 spot this week in my preseason rankings, mainly because of 2 losses. They went 2-2 this week. They lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Philadelphia 76ers, both good teams. Timberwolves have been off to a great start, and the Sixers are 1 spot ahead of them now. But they also beat the Brooklyn Nets and the Toronto Raptors. A little bit of a stagnant week for Jason Tatum. He hasn't put up the numbers that we expected, but Jaylen Brown led the scoring twice this week with 28 points and then 29 points in both of their wins. They also have a jam-packed week as well. They'll be taking on the Knicks on Monday night in Boston. They'll be at Philadelphia Wednesday. They'll be at Toronto on Friday, and then at Memphis on Sunday. So the Celtics fall 1 spot in my power rankings after their 2-2 week. Jumping up 1 spot ahead of the Celtics after beating them this week is the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 7-1 now on the season. They're on a 7-game win streak after losing the opening night against the Milwaukee Bucks. They beat the Wizards, Celtics, and the Pistons this week to move to 7-1. Joel Embiid's been off to a great start, averaging 31.9 points, 11.5 rebounds. Tyrese Maxey has also been off to an incredible start as their pure point guard now that James Harden has left town, averaging 25.9 points and 7.5 assists and 5.3 rebounds. So we have an all-star in the making now with Tyrese Maxey. He's been off to an incredible start of the season. So definitely a dynamic duo getting formed there. Kelly Oubre, as we went over before, will be out indefinitely. And they also have a jam-packed slate this week. They'll be taking on Indiana at home on Tuesday. They'll be taking on Boston at home on Wednesday. They'll be in Atlanta on Friday, and then in Brooklyn on Sunday. And then once again, for our 3rd straight week, for every week so far this season, the number 1 team in the NBA is the Denver Nuggets, the reigning NBA champs. They're 8-1 now to start the season. They only had 2 games this week, but they beat the Pelicans and the Warriors, 2 big wins. Jamal Murray, though, went down. He'll be out for a few weeks. Nikola Jokic has maintained his dynamic pace to start the season. He had 35 points, 14 rebounds, 12 assists against the Pelicans on Monday. So there isn't too much to say about the Nuggets besides they just keep rolling. There's still only 1 loss, and they're the team to beat in the NBA to start the season. You know, the Sixers and the Celtics are up there, but the Nuggets, once again, are at the tippity top, I think, and there's no one that has truly overtaken them yet. They also have a few games this week. They'll be taking on the Clippers at home on Tuesday. Then they'll be in New Orleans Friday, and then in Cleveland on Sunday to round out their week. So that's my week 3 power rankings, and that's going to wrap it up for another episode of the 3&D. Want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench Podcast Network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the socials at the 3&D ETB. We'll be putting out content all week in case you missed the entire episode. So make sure you follow all of us below, and you'll be up to date on everything. So I hope everyone has a great night, and make sure to like and subscribe to Empty the Bench on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a good night, everybody.